Religious freedom is all for the mission. With it, sharing Christ to others is greatly hastened, and its accomplishment easily fulfilled.
Sebagai seorang Kristen yang termasuk kalangan agama minoritas di Indonesia, kebebasan beragama diperlukan untuk memberikan kesempatan kepada orang-orang untuk mengenal Allah yang pengasih melalui umatnya dan tujuan hidup.
Minglaba, I'm Sonia from Myanmar. Religious liberty is very important for me because without it, we'll not be able to have worship openly and have the freedom to have registered.
Blessed evening with the Lord, brothers and sisters in God's family. Greetings from the Central Philippine Union Conference, and we welcome you all to the second night of this Public Affairs in Religious Liberty Emphasis Week. We trust that you were blessed by the presentation brought to us by Attorney April Joy Cahelo last night on the brief history of the Seventh-day Adventist Church and religious liberty. And we would like to extend our warm thanks to all of you who joined us last night. To have a deeper understanding of what Parl Department does, we are inviting you to once again stay tuned with us for tonight's presentation on Parl's Global Philosophy with Judge Joseph Canyal Valencia from Negros Occidental Conference. May our hearts be filled with gratitude to the Lord who has given us this wonderful sacred gift, the gift of freedom, as we listen to His servant. Welcome once again and good evening.
I hear the voice of Jesus calling. My answer is, I will go. I see the need of people crying. My answer is, I will go. I go to share the message of love. I go to share the blessed hope. But if I get discouraged, I call to Jesus' help, because I have decided I will go.
Good evening, fellow believers in Christ. I am Judge Joseph Gedeoni C. Valencia, presiding judge of the Municipal Trial Court at La Castellana, Negros Occidental, Philippines. Tonight, I am tasked to bring to your attention and refresh your understanding on the global philosophy of one of the departments of our church, which is the Public Affairs and Religious Liberty Department, commonly known as PARL. And tonight, I understand this is the second night of our Parl Emphasis Week. So welcome to those of you who are viewing online, viewing at our different screens in the different churches covered by our division. To refresh our understanding on the Parl, or the Public Affairs and Religious Liberty Department's philosophy and approach, it is helpful to look at the documents that has provided the blueprint for Parl's mission. And there are three primary documents that we are basing our mission from. That is our church manual, the General Conference Working Policy, and the SSD, or the Southern Asia Pacific Division Working Policy. So tonight we will go over them one by one. The church manual, we will start with our church manual, gives us a brief overview of the work of Parl. The church manual sets the objective of the Parl department, which is to promote and maintain religious liberty, with particular emphasis on the human right to have or adopt the religion of one's choice, to change religious belief according to conscience, to manifest one's religion individually or in community with fellow believers in worship, observance, practice, witness, and teaching, subject to respect for the equivalent rights of others. We can find this in our church manual under Parl. Also, our church manual declares that each church is considered an informal religious liberty association. In other words, each church is considered one member of the Parl. It is an association in itself. And every church member is considered a member of the association. The pastor or an elder designate could be assigned as the chairperson of this department or the Parl. Now, for the religious liberty leader, the religious liberty leader should be elected in every local church and should cooperate with the conference or union when it comes to the program that is being spearheaded by our union or conference under the Parl department. The leader's qualification should be of positive spiritual influence, able to meet the general public, interested in public affairs, proficient as a correspondent, and concerned with the preservation of liberty for God's people. Now, if you notice, it doesn't have to be a lawyer or an individual who is a learned of the law to become a leader of the Parl in your church. It is sufficient that the leader should be of positive spiritual influence and he or she is able to meet the general public. Of course, there is an advantage if your leader has some knowledge or working knowledge on the law, particularly the law in your place, because as of now, I'm sure you know that each country has its own law. Now, moving forward, under the General Conference Working Policy, it somehow has a longer and more comprehensive description of Parl's philosophy. The working policy also gives us guidance on Parl's work in developing relationships with other religious groups. So if you could read that in your screen. Number one there is the use of force and coercion is inimical to authentic religion. God accepts homage and worship only when they are freely given. While all human rights are of great importance, religious liberty is unique and of special significance. It deals not only with the interhuman dimension, but with a person's relationship with God, the Creator. Now, Seventh-day Adventists, therefore, view religious liberty as the primordial human right that undergirds all human rights. The second working policy that serves as the basis of our Parl's submission is that the separation of church and state offers the best safeguard for religious liberty. As we all know, one of the enjoyments that we have right now is that the church and the state are still separated. And we all know from Bible that one day there will be a union between the church and the state. But as of now, they are still separated. And according to Matthew 22:21, render therefore unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. So Public Affairs and Religious Liberty Department encourages, where feasible, such separation. The Public Affairs or the Parl Department also believes that the union of the church and the state is a sure formula for discrimination and intolerance. And there's a fertile soil for the spread of persecution. And we all know from history that once the church and the state has united, then persecution is just outside the door. In that, in fact, there is a seemingly a twin relationship between persecution and the union between the church and the state. And the sad fact is that separation of church and state will not remain forever. We all know that from the Bible. The third is that in view of its divinely ordained rule, Civil government is entitled to respectful and willing obedience to the extent that civil laws and regulations are not in conflict with God's requirements. For it is necessary to obey God rather than man. So that is also the third working policy of PARL in relation to the General Conference working policy. Further, the Public Affairs and Religious Liberty Department, which is one of the original core departments of the church, was established to promote and maintain religious liberty with particular emphasis on individual liberty of conscience. Later on, I will cite to you a very good example of what is known as individual liberty of conscience. In so doing, the PARL department is involved in government relations, inter-church contacts, and where indicated, networks with non-governmental organizations. So you can see one of the programs of the PARL is to interact and connect with our government people working in the government, our government organization, so that there will be a better relationship between us and the government. But not only that, there is also inter-church contacts. And of course, where indicated, there will be networks with non-governmental organization as well. In view of the Seventh-day Adventist understanding of the great controversy and the climactic events of human history involving union of church and state, eliminating the free exercise of religion and resulting in persecution, the PARL department monitors and seeks to interpret prudently concurrent trends that may reflect the prophetic scenario. So PARL is also a vanguard. It is one of the departments in our church that monitors the situation of our state. Okay? And then, of course, trying to tie it up with prophetic scenarios. And this is what I'm talking about. A very good example of individual liberty of conscience is the inspired story of Desmond Thomas Doss, which I'm sure you millennials out there have watched the film Hacksaw Ridge. Okay? Desmond Thomas Doss, or Desmond Doss, was born on February 7, 1919. And this guy was a Seventh-day Adventist. I said was because he already died on March 23, 2006. He was a Seventh-day Adventist, and he was known as the conscientious objector during the World War II. This means that he opted against carrying arms while serving in active duty. And he served as one of the medics in the Corps. Doss joined the United States Army on April 1, 1942. He is further distinguished as an individual who is considered the hero, one of the heroes in the Battle of Okinawa, wherein he was able to save 75 men. Mind you, 75 souls Desmond Doss was able to save. Now, it was only 3 years and a half later that on October 12, 1945, he stood in the White House lawn as a corporal to receive this honor. And he was given the Medal of Honor for his actions during the war. He was twice awarded the Bronze Star Medal for actions in Guam and here in the Philippines. And only 431 among the 16 million soldiers have been given this award. And this award, as you can see in your screen, was presented by no less than President Harry Truman. And when Truman presented this award to Desmond Doss, he immediately commented in front of the crowd, "I am proud of you," referring to Desmond Doss. "You really deserve this. I consider this a great honor than being the president." So this is a very inspiring life story of Desmond Doss, who stood his ground when it comes to his religion. Now, going back to our discussion, I am now presenting to you the working policy of our SSD, again in relation to the PARL's mission, purpose, and objective. So the SSD working policy gives further description of PARL's purpose, adapted to a local territorial context. The SSD working policy also gives direction to achieve the goals or desired outcome of PARL's work. So here, as you can read in your screen, the purpose is that PARL seeks to promote and maintain religious liberty within the division, with particular emphasis upon individual liberty or of conscience. It gives importance to varied cultures consisting of different ideologies, religions, and beliefs. As such, PARL is involved in government relations, inter-church contacts, and networks with non-governmental organizations which have kindred goals in upholding religious freedom. So as you can see, from the General Conference, it cascaded down to our SSD. In fact, some of the lyrics, if you could notice, were adopted from the working policy of the General Conference. Further, the department not only works for the religious liberties of both individual church members and organized entities of the church, but also supports the rightful religious liberties of all people. Now, the department envisions the following outcome. 1, a department that attends to the needs of the church members who encounter problems and challenges with regard to the free exercise of their faith and beliefs in the workplace, school, or places of residence. These are done with participation of local field PARL representatives. That is why it is very important that in your church, you have your PARL representative or the one that would head this department. Because any problems encountered in the workplace or in school, particularly in school, because of course not all of our parents can afford to send their students to our institution. So there are times wherein our students, and not all courses are being offered in our institution. So there are times that our parents would send their students outside our institution, particularly non-SDA institutions. So in this context, some of the students might be able to encounter problems in relation to their, particularly Sabbath keeping. So the PARL representative has a crucial role to play, wherein student concerned or the employee concerned would go to the PARL representative. PARL would have to inform their local conference or local mission as to the existence of the problem. And the PARL director in our conference would be very much willing to help out in assisting, particularly in the legal matters of the aspect of that problem. So it's imperative that you have your PARL representative in your church. The second desired outcome of the PARL is that an International Religious Liberty Association, IRLA, established at each country within the SSD to undertake interfaith dialogues with various government, non-government, and religious organizations in the promotion of religious liberty for all peoples, regardless of their beliefs, religious affiliations, and ideologies. And the last is that the church provided with authentic information about developments in the religious world, favorable or otherwise, in the free exercise of worship, corporately or individually. PARL members and PARL monitors and seeks to interpret prudently current trends that may reflect biblical prophetic scenarios. Again, this has been cascaded, taken from the General Conference working policy. Now, we have also some excerpts from the General Conference working policy. And this is in relation to PARL and relationships with other religions. You see, PARL is not only concerned with problems, religious problems of our students, of our employees, but it also has some other functions, particularly their relationship with other religions. So to avoid creating misunderstanding or friction in our relationships with other Christian churches, the following guidelines have been set forth. One is we recognize those agencies that lift up Christ before men as a part of the divine plan of evangelization of the world. And we hold in high esteem Christian men and women in other communions who are engaged in winning souls to Christ. In other words, PARL respects other religious institutions, of course, that uplift up Christ toward men. We also recognize that true religion is based on conscience and conviction. It is therefore to be our constant purpose, which means the Parl's purpose, that no selfish interest or temporal advantage shall draw any person to our communion, and that no tie shall hold any member save the belief and conviction that in this way the true connection with Christ is found. If a change of conviction leads to a member of our church to feel no longer in harmony with the Seventh-day Adventist faith and practice, Parl recognizes not only the right but also the responsibility of that member to change without, of course, opprobrium, religious affiliation in accord with belief. In other words, members, in accordance to his or her conscience, can change his or her religious affiliation. And Parl respects that. We expect other religious bodies to respond in the same spirit of religious liberty. So if our members, the Seventh-day Adventist members, would transfer to other religion, we respect that. But Parl also would expect that other members of other religions who will also be converted to Seventh-day Adventists would do the same. They also have to respect those members of theirs transferring to our religion. Third, when interdivision work brings us in contact with other Christian societies and religious bodies, the spirit of Christian courtesy, frankness, and fairness shall prevail at all times. Fourth, before admitting to church membership, members of other religious organizations, care shall be exercised to ascertain that candidates are moved to change their religious affiliation by religious conviction and out of regard to their personal relationship with Christ. A person under censure of another religious organization for clearly established fault in Christian morals or character shall not be considered eligible for membership in the Seventh-day Adventist Church until there is evidence of repentance and reformation. That is why it is also one of the duties of your Parl department in your church to ensure and see to it members who are transferring from other religious organization that would want to belong to our church. The Parl department would have to investigate. We call that a character investigation, especially those who were, let's say, kicked out from their religious institution due to Christian morals or questionable character. So it would be the work of the Parl to investigate and caution the church, okay, not to readily accept those members without conducting first investigation. Number 6, while this is quite long, the Seventh-day Adventist Church is unable to confine its mission to restricted geographical areas because of its understanding of the Gospel Commission's mandate. In the providence of God and the historical development of His work for men, denominational bodies and religious movements have arisen from time to time to give emphasis to different phases of gospel truth. In the origin and rise of the Seventh-day Adventist people, the burden was laid upon us to emphasize the gospel of Christ's second coming. The burden was laid upon Parl, upon the Seventh-day Adventist, to emphasize the gospel of Christ's second coming as imminent event, meaning an event that cannot be, it is sure to happen, calling for the proclamation of biblical truths, particularly in Revelation 14:6-14, and this is the what we know as the three angels message. So any restriction which limits witness to specified geographical areas therefore becomes an abridgment of the Gospel Commission. The Seventh-day Adventist Church also acknowledges the rights of other religious persuasions to operate without geographic restrictions. Okay, so in other words, Parl also sees to it that we won't have any problem when it comes to spreading the good news of salvation in other geographical areas. Okay, so there you are, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. I end my talk right here, and may God grant us all the wisdom to be His ambassadors to the world. This is our prayer.
I hear the voice of Jesus calling. My answer is, I will go. I see the need of people crying. My answer is, I will go. I go to share the message of love. I go to share the blessed hope. But if I get discouraged, I call to Jesus' help, because I have decided I will go.
We praise the Lord for using His servant to present to us such essential truth on the philosophy of this important department of the Church. Thank you so much for joining us once again, and we are inviting you to be with us tomorrow night on the third presentation focusing on Church Ambassadors with Brother Ronnie Gumbok from Romblon Mission of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. May we all have a blessed night with the Lord.
Religious freedom is all for the mission. With it, sharing Christ to others is greatly hastened, and its accomplishment easily fulfilled.
Sebagai seorang Kristen yang termasuk kalangan agama minoritas di Indonesia, kebebasan beragama diperlukan untuk memberikan kesempatan kepada orang-orang untuk mengenal Allah yang pengasih melalui umatnya dan tujuan hidup.
Minglaba, I'm Sonia from Myanmar. Religious liberty is very important for me because without it, we'll not be able to have worship openly and have the freedom to have religious